Hello, welcome to another episode of Field of Screens podcast. Today we're going to be talking about a movie called Don't Move. Don't Move is a movie that has been recently released on Netflix, and to be honest, I wasn't even really going to check it out, but my wife wanted to watch it, and I was like, okay, what's it about? Oh, it's about a girl who gets drugged by a guy, and she's trying to escape, and she can't move. The premise seemed really silly to me. It really did. I was like, okay, whatever. I've seen sillier premises, so let's see what this is all about. In this movie, we have Iris, who's played by Kelsey Asbiel, and then we have Richard, who is, our evil psychotic killer, played by Finn Wittrock, who was in American Horror Story. That was kind of cool to see him in a movie after being in that. I will admit the beginning does a very good job. It gets you involved with our main character. She's up on top of these mountains. She goes up to a tree. She's trying to carve something, and then she walks to the ledge of a cliff / mountain. And then this guy approaches. Who, if you read the summary of the movie, which you probably did, because if you're watching it, you're like, oh, what's this about? And then you're like, all right, I'll watch it. And so this guy's up to no good. But the guy who plays the killer, he really knocks it out of the park, because even his dialogue in the beginning, he's just kind of talking to her, calming her down, hey, what are you doing? And she tells him about how she had a young boy. And the young boy, he fell off on that same exact spot, was killed. She should have been watching him. She got sidetracked. And that's when her kid fell. So, emotionally, you connect with her right from the get-go. It's like, man, that would suck. That would be terrible. And you can tell just before she even gets to the cliff, while the credits are rolling in the beginning, she's just kind of laying in bed. She seems clearly troubled. But eventually this guy, he kind of talks her down. He starts talking about how he got into a car crash and he was in a coma and he couldn't move. And, it's just always stuck with him. His wife died, I think he said. And, once he, talks her down, they start going to the car. And what's going to happen. Eventually, he strikes her, and then he poisons her. And then you're into the movie. It's don't move. And you're like, okay, let's see how we do. And it does a very good job of, even right from the get-go, she's in the car. She's, trying to get loose. She's trying to get her cell phone to call. And he's just kind of very monotonely, this isn't his first time. He's like, yeah, don't even bother. There's no service. I know you have a lot to live for. Don't even try it. Just kind of go for the ride. And he's just talking very calm. He's a completely different guy than what you just saw a couple minutes ago. The exposition in this film, it really gets you up to date, because once she kind of breaks free and they kind of fight for a second, he tells her, hey, I poisoned you. You have a little bit of time. Eventually your legs are going to shut down. Your vision's going to get weak. You're not going to be able to hold anything. And he's just laying out all these rules. This dude has poisoned lots of people before. Pretty soon she's not going to be able to move, so she better react quickly. And she goes for the run. She runs away from him, and this dude, he's just walking after her, taking his sweet time. And then it really starts to get fun, because when she gets to the point to where she can barely move, she uses her last bit of energy to put herself in a river to where she floats down, and the killer's you're gonna drown, he's all concerned. That's how much of a psycho he is, he doesn't want her to drown that way. He wants to kill her. But yeah, that's when the fun kicks off, and then you get these little situations. This movie is very clever with, putting someone in a position to where you can't move, talk, or do anything, and keeping it very entertaining and suspenseful. The first big moment is eventually she floats down and comes across this old guy who kind of takes her in. He notices that she can't move, and he's very smart. He's blink once, blink once for yes, blink twice for no, and he basically gets the information he needs. That she can't move, she can't talk. He brings her into the house, but of course the killer comes knocking, and when he does, I love the guy who played the old guy in this film. He does an awesome job, and just like the killer does an awesome job, he comes into the house and he's acting like that's his wife, and her body shuts down when she gets nervous, and there's problems and stuff. And one thing this killer is very good at, he's very good at recognizing people's weaknesses or their soft spots, and he spins a story to kind of appeal to that person, and he tricks them. And he almost gets this old man, like he's about to like hand over this girl, and he's like, I haven't been honest with you. And the guy's like, oh, okay. Like, what haven't you been honest about? And like before he can answer, the killer's phone starts going off, and the old man realizes that the killer said that he lost his phone like a mile back, and he goes, oh, I thought you didn't have your phone. And the killer's like, oh, I hit my head, like I'm not thinking clearly. And then the old man like catches on, and he like tries to get him out of the house, and they have this big old fight. Very good scene. I will say the one part that kind of put me off of it is eventually like, the killer does take out the old man, and he catches the house on fire, which again, very suspenseful. The girl's like down on the couch. She's like trying to get the killer's attention. But the fire was like CGI, very obvious CGI. And I was kind of like, oh, like that kind of takes you out of the moment. But other than that, that's my one complaint about this movie, the CGI fire. If that's the only spot it's kind of weak, and kudos to the makers of this movie. Once the killer reunites with our main character, they go through like a lot of events together. He's got to go to the gas station. He's trying to clean up this mess he just started. But the one standout moment of the guy who played the killer, because again, like he did a fantastic job. Like he can go from being a very relatable speaker, you feel for his problems while he's spinning his story, and then he just goes completely psycho. But the one moment that really stood out to me is when they're driving, and his wife calls, and he pinches the main character to make sure she can't talk, and he like starts talking to the wife, and it's his daughter on the phone. So it's like, oh, like this dude has a family, and he's doing this stuff. And the daughter's telling him that she did this big accomplishment. She goes, yeah, we're going to come up to your cabin and we're going to celebrate. And like the look on his face, like he just pauses for about 3 to 4 seconds. And you could tell like he is just conflicted. Like he's like, oh, I'm in some shit here. Very good moment. I like that. It's a small moment, but a good moment. It shows, it doesn't tell. But eventually he tells his daughter like, yeah, you guys can come up tomorrow morning. So you kind of get the sense that this dude's going to dispatch of our main character rather quickly, because he has a lot to clean up. He's pretty messy too. He's a good talker, but he's messy as can be when it comes to doing procedures like this. So the ending of this film, I'll just jump right to that. It's a cool little showdown. Like they're in a canoe. Again, the main actress, on one hand, I'm like, man, it'd probably be cool to be an actor or actress, and your main job is just not to move. But she does a great job with her eyes of just telling like the emotion that she has or the thoughts that are going through her head. There's not only a lot of nonverbal, but not a lot of non-movement emotions too. So I guess it does take a lot of skill to do that. But eventually, like they are on this like little canoe, and she has this like big final showdown with like the killer. And eventually she gets him off the boat. I think she shoot him. Yeah. She grabs a gun. She eventually gets free. She's able to move by this point. And she shoots him, but while she shoots him, she shoots about like 3 or 4 rounds. It was like her last like little bit of strength, or I forget how it really goes. But eventually like she can't move, and she's on this canoe, and like water starts to flood in. Again, another very suspenseful moment. They know how to put this main character in positions where you're like, oh no, like this could be her demise. But eventually like she gains enough willpower to get back to land, and she goes up to the killer, who makes it back too, and he's like dying out. It did make me wonder, in her final moments, like if they ever set up a sequel, would they have this main girl who has now been through this traumatic experience of not being able to move? And what if she took the mantle of being the new killer that makes people not move? Like she finds this dude's journal where he's doing all these weird experiments, like, with the poison and stuff. And this is now her life of hunting people down and like poisoning them to where they can't move. And she puts them in predicaments that are quite dangerous. If they were open to a sequel to this movie, could that be a path they go down? Now, granted, our main character doesn't seem very evil. Seems like a very nice lady. So, At least that I think. She spent most of this movie not moving or talking. But yeah, overall, it's a pretty good movie for the premise itself. The premise, I was kind of like, oh, like the girl can't even move. Like, what are they going to do? Like, push her around in a wheelchair? But no, like, it did a pretty fine job. And the only way that can happen is through good acting and good storytelling. If there was a lot of down moments in this movie, like, this would not work very well. It had to be written well. It had to be acted out well. Again, the main character, she does a great job for someone who doesn't move or talk for most of the movie. Has to show a lot of emotion just through eye movement and twitching. Like, it sounds funny when I say that. The guy who's from American Horror Story, he rocked it. He plays a great psychopath. I don't know, maybe every actor and actress deserves a moment to just try to be a complete psychopath in a movie. Like, it legitimately looked fun with what he was doing and working with. He's even talking about, like, he's talking about how God chose him to be, like, this killer. I don't know, like, he just has, like, great dialogue moments of just, at one moment you're like, man, like, I wish this guy wasn't that bad. But then he starts talking, you're like, okay, this dude's just, like, lost his marbles. And it blows your mind. He's got a family and everything. It's a very good story. Very good story for the premise that it has. So I was impressed with this movie. I was entertained. If you're looking for just a simple movie to get some popcorn and just watch some stuff go down, this is the perfect one. So yeah, it's on Netflix. It's easy to get. So there you go. That's my review over Don't Move. I appreciate it if you're still listening. If you are still listening, feel free to give it a like. Because it, gets the episode out to other people and helps the channel. Feel free to comment and tell me what you think of this movie. Maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you agree with me. Tell me. And again, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and do that too. So you know when the next episode's coming out. But again, I appreciate you listening. And until next time, guys.